Hey, Lydia.
Hi,
Glad you're here.
thank you. And I'll be here as long as I can, but I'm requesting an excuse if possible.
Denied, Lydia, denied.
If you need to be excused, Lydia, I mean,
I'm okay for now. Maybe if they need me, they'll come and get me. They know where I'm at.
okay,
So,
all right, sounds
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, though.
This is going to be a 30-minute meeting.
It looks short, but I wanted to make sure. That's why I'm here.
all right,
A two-page agenda. Oh, yeah.
all right. All right, okay. All right, it is 5:01. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee. I'm Jack Walsh, the chair. We have committee member Paul McDaniels here. Committee member Lydia Cepha-Dawson is joining us by Zoom. She may need to be leaving midway through the meeting. And we also have Deputy Mayor Honda and Council President Linda Kochmar here with us. And begin with, is there any public comment?
No, there's not.
Okay, let's go on to committee business. First, approval of the July 11, 2023 minutes. Can I hear a motion on that?
I move to approve the minutes from, when is it? Sorry.
July 11.
July 11th, 2023, as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 It is unanimous. On to item B. King County Sheriff's Office Registered Sex Offender Cost Reimbursement Agreement for 2023 and 2024.
Good evening, Council. I have two agenda bills. The first one is the King County Registered Sex Offender funds. The policy question is, should the City of Federal Way, the Police Department, accept the Registered Sex Offender Overtime Cost Reimbursement Agreement from the King County Sheriff's Office for the 2023-2024 grant period? Just a little background on the grant money. King County Sheriff's Office will reimburse the city up to $16,304.75 for officer overtime related to the performance of grant services. Those services are verifying addresses of registered sex offenders that live within our city. We produce a list ever so often, and we have detectives go out and verify that they do or do not live there. If they are in violation, then we forward a case to the county for prosecution. But all of that money, since 2009, we've used it all up every year, doing that overtime emphasis on registered sex offenders, and that's where the money goes.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Council President Kochmar.
Thank you. So I see that Lydia has a question. so
Oh,
we-
oh,
She's on the committee.
Lydia, Councilmember Cepha-Dawson, go ahead. I didn't see your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Council President. One question is, I saw that the frequency of visitation or verification is every 12 months, 6 months, and 3 months, depending on their level. So is there anything that would trigger for our officers to do the check more frequently? Just to make sure that they're in compliance, or is this the set standard time?
Generally, it's a set
Or-
standard time. If we have a high level that is more frequent, we can do it more frequently. They also, if they're contacted by police outside of those checks, that we report that back to the county as well. We talk to them because of a traffic stop, and this is where they said they were living. So it does get reported a little more frequently, and if the county sees a need for it, we could make it even more frequent.
Okay, thank you. And do we know how many we have in this, in our city? How many sex offenders?
I pulled the list today, and today it's 207.
Wow.
That we have to verify. That also does not include anybody that is considered transient. They're in a separate reporting system. But it fluctuates. It goes up and down monthly, depending on how many come in and how many leave.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. So, 207, how many of those are, do you know, how many would be level 3?
I don't have that number handy. I could definitely get it to you, but level 3 are typically the lower end of that. We don't have too many of those.
So level 3, which is the higher end, level 1?
I'm sorry. Level 1 is the higher.
Higher.
Level 3 is the lower. And
Oh, so level 1's the one I'm in.
the majority of them are the lower classification, with a
Okay.
few of the kidnapping,
Yeah.
sex offender mixed in.
How many, do you think, can you guesstimate how many are in the encampments?
I don't have even a guess on that.
Because they probably come and go. It's
They
hard
come
to
and
know.
go, and we don't get them on the list of people that we have to go out and verify because they're under a separate system that the county verifies through different ways, like through services they receive, things like that.
Can I ask another question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. So level 1 is the highest, you said?
Yes.
Then why is there visitation less frequently for level 1 than it is for level 3?
I'm sorry. Level 1 is the lower end. Level 3 is the higher end. Thank you for correcting me.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, that is correct. That is why those numbers are wrong.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember McDaniel.
Well, you guys got most of them. The last one I have actually is, what is the difference between the level 1, 2, and 3? Like, what is the basic level 1 classification, 2, and then 3?
The more violent the incident or the age of the victim can determine which level they're at. Priors they could have been a level 2 and they move because of a subsequent offense, they could move up to a higher level. Typically, it's based on history and the actual crime that they are classified under, whether it's a first-degree rape or a second-degree rape could skew that. It's all based on each individual incident or a combination of the history of them.
So in anything we look at, like a rape 1, 2, or 3, the higher the number, the more severe the actual perpetration is then?
In that case, 1 is the highest.
Just the
First degree
opposite.
is the highest, second, third, it goes down. So if they were a third-degree rape, convicted of third-degree rape, and committed another one that was either a second or a first, they could be moved up 1 or even moved up all the way to the top, depending on the circumstances of the crime.
So rape 1 most likely be like a level 3, whereas a rape 3 would be a level 1.
Correct.
Oh, that's confusing. Okay.
That's where I get them, they go backwards and forwards, so yeah.
Okay, that was, and then, would you be able to get an idea of the levels breakdowns like they were asking for? Is that
I could do
possible?
that, yeah, I could.
But it's 207 total, all classifications, city of Federal limits?
Correct,
Okay.
Excluding encampments.
correct.
Okay, all right. Next, Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So we have 207 that you're tracking. Is that typical for a city our size?
That's pretty normal. I could get stats on, our surrounding neighbors, but I think they're all being about that same. I think they get a little higher the closer to Seattle you get. And then they probably come up again as you get closer to Tacoma. We're being right in the middle. And a lot of people can be on that list that come from another state. They're required to also register in our state. So they can't necessarily run from the registration. But that's probably pretty typical for a city our size.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And Council President.
So, at one point, we had, I think it was level 3 sex offender housing going to be sited east of the freeway, and that didn't happen because the neighbors were outraged. And there was another house that was being sited on this side of the freeway. So my question is, where are these people living?
They're everywhere, from your typical, your Twin Lakes neighborhood all the way to.
No, I mean, are they in houses with their family, or are they in houses with other?
The majority are in their own houses or houses with family. And then there's the smattering of the group homes that usually are the lower level ones, not like the ones you're talking about that were supposed to come, it didn't come in. I believe they were trying to do that in Enumclaw as well, the same type of a situation. We don't have any of that at the moment. So they're kind of spread out. I mean, I'd say the majority of them do live in their own either apartment, house, or with family.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Hey, do we,
So what is, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
My brain is, so what determines where they live? Is it where they have a place to go, or is it where the court says they go, or?
It could be either one. The higher the level, there's more restrictions, like they can't be within so many feet of a school or a bus stop or a daycare. They may have that restriction. Some of them have no restriction other than they have to report it however often their specific level requires. There can be some court oversight of where they live, or who they live with even. They can't live with convicted felons. Now, they may make an exception for a group of registered sex offenders to live in a group home, but that has to be a structured group home where there's actually some type of program involved with it. But there's a lot of things the court can do, or sometimes they just say you just need to register every 6 months or every 12 months.
Will we be notified if we have repeat offenders that are arrested in our city?
If they're on the registered sex offender list, there are, through the county, some reporting sites that can alert you to a new sex offender moving into your neighborhood. Doesn't give you the exact location, gives you a ballpark radius around an area that you have a level 1, 2, 3 sex offender moving into your neighborhood.
I'm sort of more concerned about the ones that are transient, you know, because,
Yeah, those are a little harder to track, and I'm not exactly sure how the county does that. We do run into them occasionally.
well, so the court releases them so they can go sleep under a bridge? I mean, I don't get that.
They do.
Amazing.
Yeah, they still have to register. I think they have to register a little more frequently as a non-housed person. They have to act. Today I'm staying in Federal Way, tomorrow I'll be in Kent. I don't know how often that is, but they have a few.
I think we would just like to be notified if there's anything we need to do to protect our citizens,
Yeah,
especially our
and
children.
when we can, we do. Unfortunately, with that particular population, it's harder to do because of the movement.
Yeah.
If there's an arrest, then there may be some notification we can do.
Is there a way that we can get any, I mean, who would we go to if we want to have a number on those transient sex offenders?
I could probably get that from King County. I could probably have it to you guys.
Okay,
pretty
I
quickly.
think that we'd appreciate that.
Sure.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I can get those numbers along with the totals, yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
And also how they check in and what the county looks for when they're measuring how many transients there are.
Okay, yeah,
It would be interesting just because not all folks go to the day center or, you know, to
Right.
wherever they're going to get services. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember
Can I have
Septas.
one more comment?
Yes, go ahead.
So with hospitals, if they don't have an address to go to, they don't release their patients. So I wonder why courts release people to a no address.
it's a very good question.
Do they not have any requirement or anything in place for them to not do that?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll find that out as well when I find out, like Mayor, Deputy Mayor Susan Honda asked about how they determine what level they're at and where they can and can't go. I'll ask that question because I'm curious of that myself.
Thank you.
All right, very well. That's, do we have a motion?
Yes. I move to forward the proposed agreement to the September 19th, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Yep, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. And you have another item,
I have number
believe.
2 on that.
WASPC funding for the use of force and duty to intervene training.
Thank you. In the second agenda bill, the policy question is, should the City of Federal Way, the Federal Way Police Department, accept the one-time funding of $47,455.50 from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, WASPIC, for state-required use of force and duty to intervene training? Just a little background on what that money is for. First of all, there's no financial impact to the City of Federal Way. It's money that we're bringing in to provide the training to our officers that's required by state law now on de-escalation, duty to intervene when we see something that's not going right, or provide aid when there is a use of force used. But a little background on that. It's one-time funding. It's not earmarked for future use only. We can use it on expenses we've already incurred on this training, which we have done some to meet the state requirements. But it offsets our training costs. There's no specification on how we can use the money as far as what materials or what has to be taught, but we can use it on trainers overtime. We could bring in trainers from outside training companies and purchase their services with this money to have them train our people. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of, it's not a specific set of training guidelines that we need to follow, so we kind of make them up as we go, but we meet the state's new standards. We do need to meet the requirements based on the new state laws, and with this money, we can accomplish that as far as using it to fund any equipment or police overtime, trainers, outside training, et cetera.
Thank you. Councilman McDaniel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have one quick one. Is the whole police force required, or is it just actual street? Like, who's required to take this training?
That's also one of those areas, the legislature, that they didn't define, but our intention is to go from the chief down is going to get this training.
Okay.
At least the majority of it. They may not do some of the physical parts of it, but the bare bones, everybody will get it
Okay.
from the chief down.
All right. And does it cover 100% of the training costs, or do we still have more training costs over and above what this grant will cover?
Not knowing exactly what our training is going to be kind of makes it impossible to forecast that, but I don't see any reason why with that type of money we can't get at least probably 2 years worth of training out of that money. Because the way we do our training now, we don't incur a lot of overtime anyway. We schedule it on days where we have overlap shifts, where there's one shift on the street, the other one comes in and does the training. So we're not paying them overtime. They're here on their normal days. So overtime won't be the majority of this cost. We're in some grants, like the last one with the sex offenders, that's an all overtime grant money system. This one, I think we can stretch it out for at least 2 years, if not
Okay.
longer.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. No further questions. Do we have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the September 19th, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 It passes unanimously.
Chair, before Officer Murphy leaves, can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
So because Councilmember Sefa Dawson and I both were asking this question, so I Googled level 3 sex offender because my brain is still saying back on that. So level 3, these offenders pose a potential high risk to the community and are a threat to reoffend if provided the opportunity. Most have prior sex crime convictions as well as other criminal convictions. Their lifestyles and choices place them in this classification. So you're right to the extent that, there's different intervening factors, but my concern would be how many level 3 we have in our community. I'm really concerned.
Yeah, I can
about
get you a
that.
breakdown of all the levels, but specifically 3. Those
Yeah.
3s and 2s are the ones I'm concerned
Yeah.
the most with.
Thank you.
Because the ones can be plea bargain deals where they have to register as a
Yeah.
result of, instead of getting convicted of a sex crime, they convict them of a lesser crime, but they make them register.
Yeah, and there may be, a lot of people, sometimes there's differences of opinion with what really happened, and it's
Yeah,
hard to, it's the level 3 that.
the level 3s are definitely the highest concern. But I'll get those numbers to you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And our next 1, 2, 3 items, Autumn Gressett, item D, Heritage Capital Project Grant Acceptance for the Brookdale Community Center.
Yes. Good evening. I'm just going to pull up a PowerPoint really quick. We have one small adjustment that I believe Mary is going to give you a handout for.
Oh, thank you.
Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. Hey, Mary. I don't think I can share the screen. Sorry, one moment. I can get started while she shares that. Oh, there we go. Nope. No, you're sharing yours. Well, while we get that going, item D in front of you is the Heritage Capital Project Grant Acceptance for the Brook Lake Community Center. In May of 2022, we got council authorization to apply for a grant to help us go through a design and evaluation phase for the Brook Lake Community Center. In 2023, April of 2023, the legislation approved that grant for us in full. The policy question before you this evening is, should the City Council accept the Heritage Capital Projects Grant and related contract with the Washington State Historical Society? The handout you received is in regards to Attachment C, the purpose of project. It's on page 15 of 20 of the contract and page 39 in the packet that you have today, but it's also directly in front of you. The current verbiage reads that this project will provide critical support for the design phase of the capital rehabilitation of the Brook Lake Community Hall, allowing grantee, the current verbiage lists historical data regarding Brook Lake, and with the guidance of the Washington State Historical Society, they have requested that we modify the verbiage to what is in front of you. That modified verbiage lists, this project will provide critical support for the design phase of the capital rehabilitation of the Brook Lake Community Hall, allowing the grantee to reinvigorate the property, unearthing its history and bringing it back into a central component of the City of Federal Way and community gatherings. Grantee will provide public access to history through on-site historical interpretation and displays in partnership with the Federal Way Historical Society that encourages visitors to learn about the history of the Brook Lake Community Center and the City of Federal Way. Grantee will ensure project design and ongoing maintenance of the property will be in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties. And preservation activities, historical interpretation activities, and public access to history will be provided in alignment with field best practices for the purpose of the Heritage Capital Projects Program as identified in the program's authorizing language. And then I provided a revised motion there, but to give a little bit more context to the project, it will begin shortly after the signing of this grant, and we will work with a design and consultant firm to determine its structural stability, and work with the community and others to determine use of the facility moving forward depending on design plan. And the project is planned to wrap sometime around spring of 2024 with updates along the way to council. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you guys might have.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Autumn. Councilmember McDaniel.
I just want to verify, so the grant's for 50,000, the city will put up 100,000-ish?
That is correct.
And this is strictly for design, so there's no construction, no nothing, just what we think we should do with the budget for what it's going to actually cost?
It'll be a full structural and seismic evaluation for the entirety of the facility to make sure we understand if there's any issues that we would encounter as we plan to try and preserve that facility, and then provide us a budget for what it would take to restore the facility.
Okay, does the grant have any hooks that say that we have to then move forward with the next part of the phase?
Absolutely not. If we determine that it is cost prohibitive to move forward to the next phase, we are not bound by this grant to do so.
Okay, and my last question is, because I'm kind of confused with some of the properties we own, is recently we passed, I think $100,000 for doing a roof replacement. That was not for this location, was it?
Sorry, I will punt to Jason on this one to answer.
Yeah, and so that money was for the roof on the historic log cabin portion of it. Parks Maintenance is working. The hall was an addition that was done in the 50s, I believe, if I'm going off the top of my head in memory. And so that was red tagged by community development about 5 years ago. We've been in the process, been working all year to get the environmental permits to do the demo and get rid of that. So that work is slated for mid-October to start. And so what we're gonna do is get within, 5 feet of the historic cabin, surgically remove all the old hall portion, and then kind of surgically remove the remaining portion from the historic log cabin. The money set aside for the roof, we'll put a roof on there, in accordance with, well, it's literally got a geyser running through it now, and there are tarps, preserving that building. So that's kind of the plan, and yes, that money was for that roof.
All right, so we're gonna do a design and pre-construction on a building that we've already decided to put a roof on?
The intent is to preserve that facility long-term. If we don't put a roof on it now, then we don't have the opportunity to hopefully maintain and restore it to its original condition or to historic standards. Hence the reason why we're moving forward with the roof. Yes, there may be some questions that come up during structural evaluation and other design evaluation, but we're not changing the structure or the footprint of the log cabin. What we'll understand through this is, do we need electrical? Do we need plumbing? Is the facility structurally safe? Is there other surface water management things that we need to take into consideration as we restore it? And then part of this evaluation is having community engagement meetings to determine how is that space going to be utilized moving forward. Currently, it is under a lease with a church, and so it's an exclusive access. But part of those community meetings would be to ask further questions on if people see it as a public use space or other interpretations, and getting to a final sort of recommendation to council of what that would be.
And is there any way that they come back and say that the roof we stuck on does not match what it should have been, and we have to tear it off then?
No, because it's not currently a historic landmark.
Okay. It's not a historic landmark, but it's, if I understand correctly, if we go forward, this grant does become a historic landmark, since we're gonna be
That
underneath
is
the
not correct. We would
requirements?
have to go through additional processes to determine that it could become a historic landmark and make those steps, but that is not something that is a part of this, or that is a requirement of us preserving a historic place. It just has to have history within your city and prove that there is reasonable community engagement around that.
So the historic property they're talking about is not the same thing as a historic, it's kind of confusing to say it that way, but,
It's not marked as a historic landmark, and it
Okay.
doesn't have to be designated as one to be a historic property.
okay, that's what I was looking for. All right, I just find it interesting that we're putting a roof on it before we get the evaluation on what we should actually be doing with it. That's kind of an odd way of
The
doing it.
reality is that if we don't do it and the damage continues, then we may not have a building to preserve. It may end up that there's so much damage done that you're better off tearing it down. And so in the efforts to try and not reach that possibility, we're doing the best that we can before we get through all of the design phases. So there's minimal repairs happening, but enough to keep a roof over the place and keep everything safe.
But no one's allowed in at this moment in time, right?
It is currently being rented to the church.
For use, okay. Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So we have the old dance hall, which is going to be demoed in October. So shouldn't that be a decision that the council makes, to demo that building or try to save it? And does the Federal Way Historical Society feel that that building is worth at least investigating how we could save it?
That building was condemned by community development
I
over
know.
5 years ago.
I walked through it the day that they decided to condemn it. That doesn't mean that it can't possibly be restored or saved in some manner. I mean, we've had the property since 2014, and we really haven't done a heck of a lot to restore or maintain the properties. So I'm just wondering why historical, because it is a historical building in some measure, is going to be demoed without the council having a voice in it, or even the public here in Federal Way. We have very few historical buildings left in Federal Way, and this is one of them. And I'd like to know the opinion of the Federal Way Historical Society on this. And we have one of the persons sitting in the audience tonight. She could probably let us know.
Jason, I will look to you for more information around the community hall and its demo.
Yep, and so we had structural evaluation done on the building, and in addition, after it was condemned, the property's been, I'm trying to think of the right word, but violated by by homeless and transients that have come into that building, and even, it was condemned because your construction is on a pier-type system that is not acceptable construction standards. The west-facing wall had a significant lean, and so like I say, staff had a structural evaluation done. It was deemed unsalvageable, and I have to go back through previous iterations of council meetings or committee meetings that we've had, but I thought we had let council know that that was the status of the building, and our intent was to remove it.
What I remember is that, yes, I've heard over and over that your intent is to demolish it, but it never came to council for a vote. And I think something like this needs to come to council for a vote. But I'd also like to hear the Historical Society's opinion on this, because even if it takes more money than we might have, if it could be restored to what it was, then perhaps we should try to invest in our past and restore it instead of just ripping it down because it's in really bad shape.
And if you had anything worth salvaging in that portion of the building, I would concur. But there is no redeeming structural value to save in that building. I mean, maybe you could save the wood floor and you have that historic floor that could potentially be reinstalled in a new hall, but it doesn't meet the construction and code standards of today, and it's a severe liability to the city, in my opinion.
Could we at least hear from the Historical Society?
Yeah, let's,
If you don't mind, Mary.
yeah.
I know you must have an opinion because we've talked about this in the past.
Right. Mary, thank you for your cooperation.
It's okay. We have talked about it at the Historical Society, and we actually concur with Parks that the significance, and at our annual meeting, we're going to be talking about Brook Lake as one of the last of the roadhouses. But it was an add-on, and the importance to us is to save the original portion, the log portion. So we do understand that, like when we worked with Camp Kilworth, we had to make concessions. You know, what is the most significant part that we want to preserve? And so we are acknowledging what Parks is looking at, and we're acknowledging the fact that it has real history here, and we are thrilled that the grants are available to help preserve the original log part. So we've kind of, in our own minds, we've made concessions that if the hall has to be one or the other, it would be the log part that we'd want to see preserved. So,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
I still think that when we're taking down a building that has had such significance in Federal Way, that the council probably should have had a vote on it, but apparently not, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Lydia, I'm not seeing you right now. Did you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. Help me understand, this is an MOU, and I don't know why we're talking about the structure. Can you please help me with that?
We're not on we're on item G right now, which is item, or excuse me, we're on item D. Item G is the MOU. So item D is the grant acceptance.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm on the wrong item then.
So, all right. Any further questions about item D? So, and I think that one thing's clear is that the grant acceptance here would be separate and apart from any decision on the hall part anyway, which looks like that decision's already been made. But acceptance of this grant is what we do with the hall is inconsequential to this grant, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay. So, seeing no further questions, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move to forward the proposed grant acceptance and contract to the September 19, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
As, you need to add as amended. Hey,
Lydia, can you see the
Lydia,
screen?
Okay, as amended, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead with it then.
So, yeah. Okay, Paul, do you want to go ahead? Because I'm
No problem.
looking at my
I gotcha.
agenda packet.
I move to forward the proposed grant acceptance and contract as amended and presented by staff to the September 19th, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 It is unanimous. Thank you on that, Autumn. And our next item, item E, OVG 360 venue management of the PAC renewal.
Thank you, Chair Walsh, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Coach Mar, committee members and council members. Tonight, I will be presenting for discussion the OVG 360 contract renewal for the PAC. OVG 360 currently manages our Federal Way Performing Arts and Events Center, also known as the PAC, a vibrant cultural hub nestled in the heart of our city. This state-of-the-art facility stands as a beacon of creativity and community engagement, offering a diverse range of entertainment and event opportunities. A few facility highlights include the theater, reception and event spaces, and the public art gallery in the main lobby. The jewel of the PAC is our theater, equipped with cutting-edge technology, making it a premier venue for live performances, including concerts, plays, recitals, and more. Complementing our theater is the PAC's range of adaptable reception and event spaces suitable for conferences, weddings, corporate events, and galas. These spaces can be customized to fit any event. And thanks to a partnership with the Federal Way Arts Commission, the PAC hosts an art gallery within the lobby space showcasing the works of local and national artists. Service-oriented and driven by social responsibility, OVG 360 helps facilities drive value through excellence and innovation in food services, venue operations, booking and content development, sustainable operations, public health and safety, parking, premium and corporate sales, marketing, and more. Therefore, making a positive disruption in the entertainment and hospitality industry. OVG's approach to operating is unparalleled. Maintaining a focus on creating premium content that promises to deliver a unique guest experience is what drives their team. The depth of their resources, industry experience, and relationships are unmatched throughout the industry. The team looks forward to capitalizing on their resources to help the city achieve their goals and obtain unparalleled results. The OVG 360 team at the PAC consists of 7 full-time staff and 15 to 35 part-time staff, depending upon the season. Listed here are the full-time team members leading the success of the PAC each and every day. Our successful partnership with OVG 360 over the past 5 years has had positive impact on the PAC, including but not limited to revenue growth, increased market visibility, positive customer engagement, and more. During this time, OVG 360 has consistently assumed responsibility for significant maintenance and essential capital repairs, and despite the contract designating these tasks to the city. The steadfast dedication underscores their unwavering commitment and partnership with the city and overall success of the PAC and investment in our shared objectives. These expenditures remain within their operational budget, directly influencing the annual subsidy. Since OVG 360 began management of the PAC in August 2018, 103,822 ticketed patrons have attended a variety of different performances in our theater. Included in these ticket sales are multiple sold-out shows, such as 3 separate Robert Cray performances in 2019, 2021, and 2023, State of the City addresses, Leah Salonga, Ryan Adams, Yasir Hussein, and 98.9 The Bull Frosty Fest, which included Maddie and Tay, Lainey Wilson, Thompson Square, and many others. Other notable artists and performances previously booked by OVG 360 at the PAC include our resident artist organizations, Federal Way Symphony, Jet Cities Orchestra, Harmony Kings, the Federal Way Chorale, and the Federal Way Youth Symphony Orchestra, as well as Toad the Wet Sprocket, Los Lobos, High Kings, Flip Fabrique, Joan Osborne and the Weepies, Glenn Miller Orchestra, Colin Mockery, A Charlie Brown Christmas, We Will Rock You, and many, many more. During the COVID-19 pandemic, unexpected positive outcomes emerged, demonstrating the resilience of the OVG 360 team at the PAC. Acts of solidarity flourished as people supported one another through adversity. Innovations in satellite workspaces and diverse event scenarios also paved the way for greater flexibility and efficiency at the PAC. Some examples of the pandemic positives that were included here at the PAC are Amazon driver training locations, hosting 2 different King County vaccination sites, Food Truck Fridays, operating King County elections locations, and hosting Governor Jay Inslee for a COVID-19 roundtable with local leaders. In addition to providing innovations in event scenarios, the OVG 360 team continued to engage patrons through virtual programming such as Yakov Smirnov, A Virtual Christmas Vacation, Born Ruffians, Suzanne Vega, and that's just to name a few. In August, we celebrated a 5-year milestone in our partnership with OVG 360, and the profound impact they've had is evident in our remarkable revenue growth and subsidy reduction achievements. Even during the global pandemic, OVG 360 demonstrated unwavering commitment to sustaining revenue generation, emerging with an impressive 54.77% positive revenue impact and a 62.1% subsidy reduction in 2022 compared to the last full operation year in 2019. While OVG works to diligently optimize revenue and reduce the need for subsidies, there are several factors that can make it challenging to guarantee specific reductions and/or profitability, such as market volatility, event demand, operating expenses. While they continue to employ various strategies to improve financial performance, such as marketing efforts, cost control measures, and revenue diversification, it is unrealistic to expect a specific guarantee of reduction in funding support needed. Instead, they continue to provide projections and work closely with parks and finance teams to develop a realistic and sustainable financial plan. A leading factor in success with OVG 360 is the continued open communication, periodic reviews of financial performance, and their deeply established understanding of our specific venue, all of which allow for fluent and frequent ability to adapt strategies as needed. This collaborative approach helps to ensure that subsidy reduction goals are continuing to be pursued and accomplished in a reasonable and responsible manner while accounting for the inherent uncertainties in the industry. The PAC sustains revenue from 5 distinct streams: food and beverage, facility fees, event space rental, theater rental, and ticketing. As of July 31st, 2023, OVG 360 has demonstrated notable performance metrics, attaining 68% of their ticketing goals, 60% of theater rental, 88% of event space rental, and an impressive 94% for facility fee goals. Additionally, their adept management has already exceeded food and beverage revenue targets by a commendable 28%. These figures underscore their proficient revenue management and operational excellence. Displayed on the screen before you is a table detailing actual revenues through July 31st, the approved budget, and the anticipated revenue for the remainder of 2023, calculated upon existing bookings currently in the system. These figures collectively indicate a projected 30% increase in revenue year over year from 2022 to 2023. As we engaged in contract renewal discussions, we carefully incorporated valuable feedback from the council and our community members, particularly the desire for enhanced oversight, while remaining steadfast in the commitment to achieving revenue growth and reducing the overall general subsidy. Implementing new, precise, and comprehensive performance metrics will ensure continued transparency and accountability. Revenue generation metrics set forth an ambitious yet attainable goal, mandating OVG 360 to foster consistent growth in each segment by a targeted annual rate of 2.5%. The strategic approach ensures the sustained development of our financial performance bolstering the foundation for long-term success and sustainability at the PAC. Attendance metrics outline an incremental growth strategy stipulating that OVG 360 will be tasked with achieving a 5% attendance growth during the first year, followed by 2.5% annual growth for the remainder of the partnership term. In addition, usage days metrics outlines a 2.5% annual growth rate annually for the duration of the term. Free community events performance metrics entails OVG 360's responsibility to secure local business sponsorships for a minimum of 5 annual events throughout 2024, 2025, and 2026. This commitment calls for incremental growth with an additional event required each subsequent year, reinforcing the dedication to fostering community engagement through free events over the course of their term. Types of performance metrics, or types of events performance metrics, will mandate OVG 360 to deliver a comprehensive array of events throughout the event spaces, including a minimum of 4 weddings, 50 banquets or meetings, 10 nonprofit gatherings, and a minimum of 6 Arts for Youth events annually. As we move towards the highly anticipated renewal of our partnership with OVG 360, we are excited to unveil an array of proposed transformative terms. This renewal will extend our partnership, introducing a lengthened term of 10 years that bolsters our shared commitment to success through 2033. Notably, OVG 360 is making a substantial capital investment of $200,000, solidifying their dedication to the PAC's growth and excellence. Furthermore, our collaboration will continue to flourish under revised performance metrics, as previously noted. Together, we are poised for a dynamic future of enhanced success. And at this time, I would like to introduce you to tonight's guests prior to opening the floor for questions and discussion. I'd like to thank Rick Hauntz, Senior Vice President, for joining us from Colorado. And as always, a generous thank you for Brian Hoffman for being here with us this evening. And at this time, if there is any questions regarding the length of data and detail that I provided for you, myself, John, Jason, Rick, and Brian are happy to answer any of those questions.
I'm sure that we will have questions, and Paul, I think you're the first one to light
Yeah, it's
on the
gonna-
committee, so go ahead.
Might be a little bit of time because it's the first time I saw this, all the paperwork. My
Okay.
first question is going to go with, let me get to the right chart. Okay, it's going to be the revenue allocation. Can you go back and tell me the percentages again that they hit for the like ticket revenue sales and stuff like that? It was like 60 or something like that?
Absolutely. So if we look at their revenue allocation for 2023, because that's what this one is 2023 revenue allocation.
Yeah,
They are at, and I apologize as I get back to my notes for you.
no problem.
68% of their ticketing revenue goals,
Okay,
60% for theater,
okay,
88 for event space, 94 for facility rental or facility fees. And they have exceeded their food and beverage revenue goals by 28%. So their goal was 103, and they're at 130,000 so far.
and so it's 123% of what they estimated?
Yeah, their approved budget was to reach 102,353, and they are currently, as of July 31st, sitting at 130,846.
Okay. And then when we talked about the revenue generation, increased food, beverage, revenue, all that stuff, ticket sales, it says by 2.5%. Now, is that 2.5% from what? From the 68% that they were hit? I mean, is it 100% of what?
So whatever they meet this year, if they exceed their goals and do $300,000 in food and beverage revenue, we would be asking that they increase by 2.5% next year.
So let's stick
over
with
their-
the theater one, not theater, is that theater? Let's go with ticket revenues. So
So-
with ticket revenues, it's 68% of the 100% margins, which means we're not quite to 100%. How does that 2.5% get equated to that then? Would that
So-
68% become the 100 that's then based off for next year?
Yeah. So when they reach 100, it actually is based off of whatever their ending ticket revenue is for this year. So if their ending ticket revenue is above 100% of the current budget, then it would be 2.5% on top of that, and that would be their 2024 goal.
Okay, so a bad year puts in a better position for the next year then?
Say that again?
So sadly, a bad year actually puts you in a better position to hit those 2%?
If you had a bad year, yes, but we have consistently see revenue growth year over year, except for the years that we were in the pandemic. Unfortunately, we are shuttered 2020, 2021, and early 2022 with limited venue capacity based off of state mandates and government guidelines. But for all of the years that we've been fully open, we have seen under OVG 360's management a growth in ticketing and revenue.
Gotcha. What is the current annual subsidy the city pays to keep the pack going?
This year, it is $941,363, but I will happily give you that final number.
At the moment in
I'm
time?
staring at a lot of
Yeah.
numbers, so it's
Oh,
about
gotcha.
941,000.
No, 940K, okay. And then what is the current contract amount?
The current contract that we pay Oakview Group,
Yeah,
they are at about $6,200 per month, plus an incentive fee dependent on their performance at the end of the year.
performance-based, okay.
Last year, we paid them around $85,000 in total for their management.
And that
included
included-
their incentive fee.
Gotcha. And then is the new contract in negotiation right now, or do we actually have some basic numbers?
We have
for that?
negotiated basic terms. The terms, as far as that's concerned, the management fee stays the same. The incentive fees stay the same. The only thing that would be adjusted with a renewal would be asking instead of 5 years to go to 10 years based off of their proposed $200,000 capital investment to the city.
And what is that capital investment exactly going to be tailored towards?
The capital investment can be utilized for mutually agreeable purposes. In the past, it's been utilized for items needed at the PAC, capital projects at the PAC. Oakview Group would like for it to be set aside into a separate fund, so the city would be able to attain larger acts that maybe aren't necessarily in our budget, but we want to take a chance on them, and so we've got a little bit of buffer funding. However, if the city council or city was opposed to that, we find a mutually agreeable option.
Okay, and then one more last question. So the events we have listed here, weddings, banquets, stuff like that. Currently, the city has 3 locations that are all going to be fighting for the same stuff. The Dumas Bay does weddings, the community center does weddings. Now we're going to add a third entity to wedding. I mean, I get that it's just something to add to, but I mean, now we're starting to have feeding frenzy amongst our own sectors to an extent.
So the PAC has been soliciting weddings and hosting them since they opened in 2017. The Performing Arts and Events Center, Dumas Bay, and the Community Center are all 3 wildly different venues, and we actually work really closely together that if something doesn't fit in our space, whether it's budget, size, those types of things, communicating with the other venues on if it would be a better fit there. So it's not necessarily fighting against each other, it's working together to grow everybody's business. And they attended different wedding shows and event shows to be able to do that in this past year.
Okay.
Yeah, I can concur with, I'm very familiar with the wedding industry, and they really aren't competing against each other. It's different segments.
Yeah.
So,
All right, and then the last questions I have, actually, General Manager and the Vice President, if you guys want to explain to me what you guys think you'll be doing differently to see what we can do on these numbers, or what, what's your guys' idea, since it's your company, how are we going to make the PAC more profitable and a better venue?
Hi, thanks for having us today and talking through this. I mean, I'll just, from a 30,000-foot view, we're poised, our company is poised, especially in this region, to grow the business here. From events standpoint and from actually sponsorships, we're really going to focus on. Sponsorships, naming rights is something it's number 1 priority for us right now. The regional support that we've grown in the last 5 years is incredible. When I say regional, I mean, Climate Pledge, being one of our facilities, we have a booking deal in Spokane, we have Everett, Washington, we're in quite a few others. We took over Linwood Convention, McCall Hall. So we've grown quite a bit in the region. So what we're doing now is we're using those resources to the benefit of Federal Way. For instance, chef, we don't have to hire our own chef here. We're using a chef from a different location, so we're saving the money here. Same thing with sponsorships. We're bringing the person from Everett, Washington, actually been here, who does a very good job for us selling sponsorships. Instead of hiring a body here and having that at expense, we're saving that expense, and we're going to focus on that and build that. So that's one area. As far as the events, one of the other things that we're taking on as a company, we have this thing called the Arena Alliance, where we're in the top 25 markets in the top arenas in the country. Well, we just started a theater alliance about 6 months ago, where we have Radio City Music Hall, all these the Opryland in Tennessee. So we have all these major theaters. We're starting to put our other theaters that aren't necessarily in those major markets together, and actually the group that we're doing, that we're booking these bigger venues, we're starting to get more involved with these type of theaters and say, how do we benefit from, routing and stuff like that. So we believe with that Theater Alliance, with New being this year, and then our sponsorship and regional support that we have, we're gonna grow the business here at Federal Way. And we can save on a lot of expenses, like I mentioned, with the chef coming from somewhere else and not putting that on the building. But that's from a 30,000-foot view. I don't know
Yeah.
if Brian has anything else to add to that.
No, not from, at this point.
Okay. We'll have right now.
All right.
And just a quick note, so I can jump in here in regards to profitability. One of the big things to remember about performing arts centers, especially owned by municipalities, is that best practices across the industry is not necessarily that the building will be 100% self-sustainable. There will be consistently some subsidy happening, but the overall contract request and the metrics have always been to reduce that subsidy as much as we can while maintaining profitability and increasing our market visibility with new patrons coming in the doors and maximizing all of our event spaces as many days a year as we can.
Yeah, I've learned the city's not very good at profitability, so I understand that.
This is a community asset, so unfortunately, it's treated a little bit different. Not unfortunately, it is treated a little bit different than a traditional business because it does drive economic drivers. It is helpful to have a community benefit as the pillar of your city. And so, again, across the industry, from Texas to Colorado to New York to Wisconsin, we've done a lot of research, and every venue, even in our region up in Edmonds, has a city or some sort of subsidy from their local municipality or county to help keep them going because of those reduced costs that they have out to their community. Just so that way you guys have that.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Council President Coachman.
So I'm looking at your revenue breakdown. Could you put that back up on the,
From previous years?
yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
yes.
So I'm trying to understand, so I throw out 2018, 19, and 20 because that would be COVID-related.
2020 and 2021 were COVID-related. 18, it was still being ran by the city through August 1st, and actually the city handled all bookings to the end of the year. So when we hired Oak View Group in August of 2018, they were coming in and just managing what we had already done as a city. So 2019 was their year, 2020, 2021 were COVID, so we were at the mercy of shutdowns and mandates. And then 22 would have been their sort of second full year in operation as a management company at the PAC.
So 2021, your revenue generated was 576,000.
Correct.
And the total support from the general fund for 2021 was 404,000.
Correct.
So are you telling me that there wasn't, well, that's about half the revenue of 2022, but there
What-
was less support from the general fund?
So what they were able to do in 2021 is they didn't have as many staff because of government mandates and because they had to lay off some of their team members due to not having additional events, but they did a lot of revenue diversification. They found ways to house Amazon training, which was a regular event within their parking lot, how to house socially distanced events for certain companies. So their revenue was slightly up, but they didn't have to do, they weren't doing any food and beverage, they didn't have
Okay.
additional chefs. So their expenses were down because the revenue that they brought in, let's call it $100 for the parking lot, didn't really take more than a couple of dollars for them to
All
write a
right,
contract.
thank you, Autumn. So when you look at 2022, the basically 1.3 versus 941,000, are you telling me that that's pretty basically what we're going to be dealing with over the next umpteen years?
I don't believe so. I think that we are in a positive revenue growth. I certainly don't have a crystal ball out to 5 years, but even this year, they're projecting to end at about 1.5 million, which will reduce the subsidy down to 941,000. So
So-
as we close out this year, we'll see that they didn't need as much subsidy, and we're working towards that next year as well.
So at the end of the year, can you give us a breakdown of what it actually was for 2023 so we can see
Absolutely, we'll
where
do the
what we're
same.
really dealing with?
We did the, yeah, we'll do the same thing that we did for 2022 in about February, March. We'll give a breakdown of how the previous year ended. We talk about those at that time in regards to their incentives and how their performance metrics are measured. So we'll bring that to you guys in March of 2024.
So basically, we're going to be looking at least, as you've already said, close to $1 million per year to run the PAC.
I don't anticipate that the subsidy will stay at almost $1 million. They are working towards reducing that subsidy and increasing revenue. For instance, 2022, they did 1.2 million. This year, they're doing 1.5. That gives them more funding to roll into next year, so that way the subsidy is reduced.
So just let us know. Thank you.
Just,
You can go ahead.
so is there, what is it seems to me as though that we should have a goal for what we would like to reduce the subsidy to. And I mean, is there such a thing as a realistic subsidy goal?
Setting a specific goal for reduction in subsidy is dependent on market volatility. It's dependent on a lot of different factors, operating factors, if expenses go up. So while there is an overall goal to reduce the subsidy and they're chasing that every year, I say if we're too advantageous, it won't be attainable. No matter who is the venue management company within the facility. At some point in time, there is going to be, based off of the facility capacity, there's going to be a plateau of revenues that are able to be achieved. So there will be always a significant need for subsidy. What the tune of that is, I think we still need some years of data under our belt. Realistically, this facility has only had 2 positive operating years. And so without having a true 5-year capacity behind you to understand how significantly you can impact the subsidy with positive revenue generation and with a facility that is open and not shuttered, I think that's a conversation farther down the line to look at our financial plan, but also as we do biennium budgets, those conversations come into account.
Yeah, it seems to me as though we should be, with the other facilities that the Oakview Group is operating, as a city, we should be able to establish a goal anyway for the subsidy. Given, I mean, with any business, there's market forces, which are totally, out of control. But businesses normally have a goal, a projection. And I think that we need to work on that and figure out what a realistic subsidy goal should be for long term. And I agree. I mean, hey, it's an asset to the city. It's not there to make money for the city, but I think it is there to ideally we should be subsidizing it as little as possible, and we should have an idea of what that goal should be for subsidy.
Yeah, thank you. I can answer that. First of all, Autumn's great. I should take her around to all the city council meetings I have. So it really depends. We do actually have a benchmark for right now. So there's a benchmark that we try to hit every year that we chase. And we don't make a lot of money on this unless we try to hit that benchmark. If we missed it, we made it. So we chase that benchmark. So we're trying to get that deficit down, every single year to make sure we hit that. But I can tell you, I've been doing this for 28 years with the company too. And underneath my portfolio, I probably have 50-some arenas, stadiums, theaters, convention centers. Most of them will lose money. It's a deficit. It is. That's the nature of this business. The ones that make the money are the ones that are major arenas and major markets, and they have major tenants like hockey tenants and stuff, and they will make money. But for the most part, they lose money. It's for quality of life, and it's for economic impact. But we do have a thing that we do have a benchmark that we chase every year, the deficit. And we missed it, and we make it, and so we do have that, and we established that benchmark when we first started from like facilities, like markets, and said, this is where we think it could be, and was a negotiation, like, okay, this is where we want you to be, so there was a benchmark established that we were working off of.
All right, yeah, I think it'd be well if we, if working with your benchmark and then with our city, with finance and everything. Oh, it looks like that.
Really quickly, before I let Steve take the floor, just so you know, the benchmark that we set ahead of time is based off of the subsidy. So your approved budget, whether council requests them to go back to the drawing board and try and reduce expenses so that way the subsidy is less, that's where their benchmark is set each year. Also on average through our research, again, talking to theaters not only in our region but across the nation that are similar size, municipally owned, they're sitting after significant footprint in their community, anywhere from 30 to 35% in subsidy depending on how long they've been in standing, and how long they've been operating. So that could be something that we chase or we look for as we extend out over, 5 or 10 years in order to say, this is where we want to get to and here's the plan. But that benchmark is set by council through each biennium budget.
Okay, right. Steve?
Chair Walsh, you just asked a budget question, and if we were going to be doing a budget process, a budget work study session, before we got to subsidy, I think one of the things I would ask if we were doing strategic planning is what's the quantity, what's the volume of citizens and visitors that you want to have visit the facility? It's similar to the community center where this is nothing government does makes money, but for a certain subsidy, we have an expectation of reaching a lot of citizens. So I think that might be your metric. Some government programs lose money the more they do, but this one I think might not. And so I think if you focus on the number of visitors, because it is an economic driver and it is an attraction to the city. So maybe, I know that the subsidy is revenue minus expenses, and so there's a lot going on, but if you wanted to give it a policy metric of the number of activities that they're performing, I think that would help get us to the budget answer that you want. That's just a suggestion.
No, I mean, yeah, that makes good sense to me. I mean, the subsidy per whatever, yeah. So, okay, thank you. And with that, I think that the deputy mayor was next, I believe.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to say I prefer a private organization running the PAC instead of having a city department. I was here when that was the way it happened. And, but I would have preferred to have gone out for an RFP to see what other companies run venues like this, just to see what there is out there, because we didn't do that when we initially chose this company. Spectra at the time.
Global Spectrum, and then now.
To run the company. Anyway, to run the PAC. So I would have liked to have gone out for an RFP instead of just been presented with, this is a contract and this is what's going on. So I have some questions. A 10-year contract is a very long contract, especially for a city. Do your other venues do 10-year contracts?
I'll let you answer that. My experience before Rick answers is there are other venues within our region that sit with 20 and 30-year contracts to allow a venue management company to establish relationships and profitability in the market, so that way they're not starting over every few years with somebody who is my experience. But I'll let Rick speak to sort of the broader scope.
Yeah, I mean, I think about 10, 15 years ago, the average was about 5 years. Now it's 10 years. Over COVID, we sticking to Washington, Everett, Washington, we renewed there for 10 years over COVID. So we're getting 10-year deals so we can build the business and keep the business and keep the momentum going, keeping good staff to make sure that they don't have to worry about finding other jobs. And because we see sometimes 3 or 4 years into a contract, that they see at the end of the contract, they're not sure if they're going to get renewed. They try to jump ship to go to one of our other facilities. So it's good to keep the team together, to build the business, and we want to be long-term partners. That's why we wanted to, offer the couple $100,000 of investment.
So the capital investment that has been spoken about tonight, that isn't adding any new seats or anything to the building, it's your programming, is that
That's
correct?
not, no, it's, the $200,000 would be used for anything that we both agree upon that would be better for sometimes it's adding more seats, sometimes it's getting new seats, sometimes it's adding better signage in the facility, digital signage, sometimes it's, upgrading carpets. It's mutually beneficial, but it's not, we said we'd like to be a piece of that to help go out and attract shows. It's called an event fund we have in most of our arenas, stadiums and theaters. And but again, I think that wouldn't be the majority of that. The majority of it would be a mutually beneficial, things to upgrade the facility, or maybe we ultimately like to generate more revenue from whatever it is, or a better fan experience.
Okay. In the event that we have another global event that shutters venues such as this, how would the contract change during that time when the venue could be shuttered? Would there be, how would the contract
I
address
can
that?
speak to what we did during this pandemic. Several different markers within the contract are qualitative components that have incentive fees or quantitative components that have incentive fees. We only measure off of the actual time frame that the venue is open and able to operate, is how we navigated this last pandemic. So the contract changed a little bit, as well as some of the services that are called out in the contract. We were not holding them to because we couldn't do those anymore. So it was a mutual discussion and negotiation on how we move forward through uncertain times.
And I think, one thing that, hopefully, we don't have to go through that again, but Brian and I pretty much talk every single day because things were changing and protocols were changing and the industry went through a lot and we learned a lot. But we also were ahead of that, or as a company, we were writing plans on how are we going to reopen when everything was shut down. So we are ready to go with a plan that was, blessed by, all the top officials and, and the health department. So that's one thing you got a lot of value. We also were able to, because we're private, it's nothing we like doing, but we furloughed people, because we didn't want to waste the city's money, and we furloughed people, and we brought some of them back when we started getting more events, but we were able to shift and be a little bit more, versatile during that time, so.
So when we were going through the process of making a decision to build the building, we were told as a council that the building would be making a profit. I think it was by year 3. And then there were different financial revenue projections over the
10,
years.
15
Yeah.
years.
But now we know that it's likely that the building will not make the profit that we had all anticipated. So, and that, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is, and I can understand that. What I'd like to know, though, is have we done any studies in our downtown area to show that the areas like the hotels, the restaurants, shopping, whatever you have, it has the PAC made an economic difference for those businesses? Have we done that kind of a study? And if not, when will we do that to see really what the impact that the PAC has had on our downtown?
I will let Brian answer the economic study impact, but to lead into that, a lot of conversation that's been happening during these contract negotiations are in and around the original pro forma and how the PAC was supposed to be profitable or show that it was at least making a significant amount of money and reducing the city's subsidy to next to nothing. And as we evaluate those, there is still, even throughout the 10-15 year mark, somewhere in the $200,000 to $250,000 range of a subsidy from the city. But a big chunk, and what we've been talking about on the back end, is the fundraising portion and the nonprofit donation portion, which is something we would like to have further study sessions with council on next month. We have anticipations of talking through some of that research with you and how we could make a positive impact within the Performing Arts and Events Center together to bring in more of that type of funding. It's something that, especially through the pandemic, was reduced to zero. So that's part of that conversation and looking back at those, because those models, if you look at the revenue projection in those models, we're meeting those markers. If you look at the expense line items in that pro forma from back then, we're meeting those markers based off of our revenue projections. So it's closing the gap in the middle and working to have those subsidy reduction goals based off of sponsorships, private donations, legacy funds, those types of things. So further study session with council that I think requires more than just talking about the renewal, but pivots to how do we grow from here and see ourselves many years outside of the pandemic flourishing and thriving. But I will let Brian speak to the economic. He works directly with hotels and everything a lot more.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for having us. So in regards to your question with economic impact study, hotel rooms, et cetera, we don't have currently, to my knowledge, between the PAC, LTAC, the chamber, and the hoteliers, a good system that says, okay, were your hotel nights, did they go to the PAC? What were they related to? We can really kind of drive and dig into where, for an example, this past weekend, we had a multi-day event. It was an Elite Productions bodybuilding event. We know that, I believe it was 130 hotel room nights that were directly affected by the individuals that attended the event at the PAC. There were representatives from 15 different states across the US and 4 countries that were here that performed and competed at the PAC. In November 17th, 18th, and 19th, we will have the world final bodybuilding competitions where there will be over 300 competitors from what we've been told, close to 20 different countries that will be here in Federal Way, staying at our hotels and eating after they compete. So we continue to work with our hoteliers. One of the challenges is, it's getting the hotel buy-ins with the clerks at the front desk. What are you here for? And tracking that, we're having a hotel, or we're going to the performance at the PAC. So we don't have all of that information yet, and I know in talking with LTAC members and Tanya Carter and the Chamber that we're continuing to look at better scenarios on doing that and how we can track that better to provide that information to you folks.
Oh, thank you. And one last question. So with the anticipated development of the property all around you, do you see that impacting the PAC during the development? That the development could take 3, 5, 10 years or longer, but the immediate development of starting the first multifamily building and the whatever is first, put on the property. Do you see that impacting the function of the PAC, and how could we help the PAC continue to function in its best ability with the construction? And
Yeah, so it may impact, but in a positive way. And the biggest thing is communication. When we know, and we've already done that with the demolition of the Target building, where, whether it's Autumn, whether it's Keith, whether it's EJ, the various departments throughout the city that are saying, hey, this week there's going to be more pounding because they're grinding the concrete, so we're going to feel the vibrations in the PAC floor. And we communicate that with our guests and our clients that are having their events at the facility. I was part of a renovation in Colorado, and that's what we did. It was being part of the meetings and having those conversations constantly communicating, because with construction, those things change. And then having a plan, which we have the resources, and our company is phenomenal at this, whether it's parking and street closures and how to get individuals into and out of the facility and the strip, and looking at alternative parking areas, and maybe, getting a partnership with a bus company, because if they have to park further away because of this development. But it's just really, really communicating. In the 5 years that I've been here, I have had a wonderful, wonderful working relationship with John, Autumn, and the entire city staff. So it's just continuing to have that communication, being part of the solution and working together. I can see that being very seamless, as there will be a little bit disruptions, but as long as you prepare for them and have a plan, that's the best thing that we can do and hope for.
okay, thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Before anybody, Lydia, are you on? And I'm not seeing you. Do you have any?
Yeah, I'm here, and I don't have any questions, but
Okay.
great conversation, amazing questions, particularly with what Deputy Mayor said about, maybe we don't expect any revenue, but having that venue in our city, I think is a great, great addition to our downtown. So hopefully things will turn positive in our favor, but until then, I think it's a good jewel to have in our community, and I think it'll also be very helpful if maybe even on our Facebook pages and wherever we have access to other people to just advertise it and put it out there individually. It might also help generate interest in that building. But
Right.
thank you.
Right, thank you. And it looks like the council president's questions must have been answered, so
Well,
we will.
Actually, no, I would like to ask Steve Groom to let us know at some future date what we still owe on that property and on the building,
Sure, I'd be happy to. I don't have that with me, but
and what we spend so much per year.
sure. Happy to.
And back to Councilmember McDaniel.
Yeah, just last follow-up, you made a comment about working with the hotels, and I'm going to recommend, since you have the bodybuilding coming up, survey them. Do your own survey, ask them where they stayed, what they liked about where they stayed, where they ate, get as much information as you can, bypass trying to work with that scenario of trying to get the hotels. I mean, long-term, that might be great, but you have access to them. If you have the ability to survey whoever shows up and get whatever feedback you can, so at least we have an idea if there is something. And literally, it's, here's a list of the hotels, checkbox, didn't stay in the hotel, in Federal area. Restaurants, whatever feedback you can get.
Absolutely, and we continue to look at that and work with those and work with our promoters or the individuals that are putting on the event, that are renting the facility. It's a lot of the competitors that are competing, we don't have direct connection with them or their contact information or anything like that. When we have ticketed events, a concert, or you buy a ticket from, for a ticketed event, we do have that ability to do that, and we try to communicate that way. We have comment cards and things that we're trying to get out and touch those individuals, but we always look for various ways to communicate and ask those questions and not just relying on one entity or one hotel to provide that information to us. We're out there trying to pound the pavement as well.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you've already done it a little bit. Is it possible to see a report or get some data on what you guys have collected so far with previous events you've done that with?
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
we can provide that.
So
Look forward to that.
So we run quite a few convention centers, and that's, a convention center is all about economic impact. And we can take some of that data, and there's things called multipliers, what a person will spend, so we can figure out sort of what we're doing, but it's if you really want to do a study, because a lot of cities do this, they'll do an economic study for the building, because these buildings do lose money. There's buildings out there lose $2-3 million a year, so they want to make sure their citizens know what kind of economic impact that they're doing. So they do these economic studies, and you're not talking about thousands, you're talking about millions of dollars of impact. People staying in restaurants, or staying in hotels, going to restaurants, and you'll be very surprised of what kind of impact you guys actually, have in this facility here, the economic impact it actually has. But you can do studies, but we can do a preliminary one, say, hey, this is what this event made, and, we think that, generate X amount of dollars, and use a multiplier that's used typically in a standard form in the convention center business, so.
Yeah, just something is better than nothing, and to give us at least, like I said, base point or a target starting point to move forward with or make adjustments on. I'd like to at least see something so we
Good
can
point.
go off of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I have just a couple of questions. Thank you very much for the present. Autumn, terrific job. Thank you, all of you. So, on the performance metrics, having the goal of 2.5% increase in the annual increase in the different areas. Of that 2.5% increase, what part goes to Oakview Group as their bonus? What part of that 2.5% reduces the city subsidies? And if they don't reach that 2.5% or fall or reduce, how does it work out?
So each one of these performance metrics have a dollar incentive attached to them with no more than $2,000 across each of the revenue generation and then all of the other ones. If they don't meet the metric, they don't get an incentive. Certainly, if they're meeting those metrics and growing our revenues by 2.5%, The only other way they meet another metric is if they reduce the subsidy. So there's two things that can happen. Revenue can grow, but if they spend more money and exceed the subsidy and are having to push those benchmarks, then there isn't an additional one. So to say what percent of the 2.5% goes to them would be hard to determine because it's not that 2.5%, it's performance-based.
Okay.
So if they meet that, there's a small, and I apologize, I can send these to you, and they're part of the contract that you'll see at the next Parks meeting, but I believe that each one of these is tied to $500. So if they don't meet it at the end of the year, they don't get a $500 incentive. And so it's a savings for the city technically, but also it would be lack of performance metrics from them, which issues a further conversation, which is why we're pushing those hard goals.
Okay, all right, thank you. There's no further questions. Thank you so much. Great job, Autumn. Brian, it's always great to see you. And it's John? No.
Rick.
Rick, okay. All right, okay, thank you, Rick. All right.
Thank you, guys.
And I guess that Autumn, you stay right there for our next item, item F, Rock Project Management.
Thank you all for such a wonderful discussion. Moving on to our next item. This is in regards to the Federal Way Community Center locker room renovations. This has been a large topic of discussion over the last few months. I know you guys had a presentation in regards to the current state of the locker rooms, as well as I believe a few of you were able to walk through those and see them firsthand. One of the things that we have done since then is entered into an agreement with Rock Project Management to move forward with the design and reconstruction of the Federal Way Community Center locker rooms. This includes upgrades to the mechanical supply and exhaust systems, as well as comprehensive demo and reconstruction of the locker rooms, wet sauna, dry sauna, showers, cabanas, and related spaces. Rock Project Management will act as the city's mediator between any and all design firms, contractors, those sorts of things. They're a third party. And what's been completed up until this point with Rock Project Management, and to keep the timeline moving forward so we can renovate these locker rooms sooner than later, is project charter, project management plans, roles and responsibilities matrix between city and Rock Project Management, preliminary project schedules, which I'll share with you this evening, risk registry, project budgets, communication plan and outreach and inclusion plan. That includes how are we going to engage our members and other stakeholders to make sure that we are listening to and sharing with the steps in the process along the way. And then over this past week during the annual shutdown of the Federal Way Community Center, fiberglass reinforced plastic or FRP panels were installed throughout the locker rooms and cabanas to help us have a safer space and sort of create a temporary solution until renovations can happen. Our project timeline currently, so August of 2023, which was last month, we entered into a professional service agreement with Rock Project Management for the project and construction management for the duration of this entire renovation. In September, we will advertise a request for design firm qualifications, and then we will interview design firms before bringing it to council in October for authorization to award the design firm contract and bring forth all of those details of the negotiated contract and their qualifications. December 2023, we anticipate being able to begin work with the design firm. January 2024, we'll provide a council update as to where we're at, show you sort of some of the initial renderings and answer any questions that you guys might have at that time frame and share progress. February 2024, we will come to council with approval of, to ask for approval on 85% design plan. March of April of next year, we'll advertise RFBs or request to bids to go out for a contractor to be able to complete all of the work that the design firm has proposed. And then in May of next year, 2024, we will request council to authorize and to award the contractor for construction. June, a notice to proceed would be issued for construction. July and August will consist of pre-construction preparation. And then September 2024, phase 1 renovations will begin. And then we anticipate renovations to be complete by May 2025. Our project budget for this has adjusted slightly since we last talked. We were at 1.7 million, which is what was allocated from ARPA. We do anticipate going out for the King County Parks Aquatics Facilities Grant again and applying for a $600,000 grant in February of 2024 in order to be able to close that gap to reach the 2.3 million. We do have a contingency built in there, but that is to account for construction costs that may adjust with inflation as we move forward into next year. And at this point, if you have any questions about our current progress or timeline or what else we are doing to move this project forward, I'm happy to answer those.
All right, Councilmember McDaniel.
First one is a little bit of a comment. I spent time looking at the agendas before I come here to be prepared. These last two items were not part of the agenda that I could preview beforehand. I'd appreciate in the future if we could make sure that if it's going to be something we're going to discuss, that I'll at least have the time to digest it beforehand. Can you go back to the budget, please, real quick? So just out of curiosity, what happened with the 1.7 originally? Like, what was the major changes that popped up that were unexpected?
The major change that popped up is when we initially looked at the 1.7 million, that was a fast-tracked 4 to 5 month project from the time that we talked to you about it.
Yeah.
However, based off of state statute and our policies and procedures, it would be not feasible for us to meet that timeline, and we've had to extend that timeline for a couple of reasons. To make sure that we respond to council in and around the full building assessment that has been discussed, to make sure that there isn't any additional issues outside of the 4 walls of the locker room, to ensure that all of our mechanical and structural other needs can be accounted for, and to make sure that we are doing our best to be good stewards of the citizens' money by allowing plenty of time for contractors to bid appropriately on this project, not in a rushed time frame. That pushed our project management budget out, which you'll see is why it's increased to $263,000, as well as because of moving this construction bid out a year, we have to account for potential inflation, labor rate changes, those types of things for prevailing wage and everything else.
Okay. And then how much was the pool that we just got done taking care of? Was that 2 point something, or?
The pool that we are just getting ready to finish is just under 1.3, and I'll have a final report for that for you guys in the next month or so.
That was a total cost for everything in the pool?
I'd have to go back and just double check my numbers because I know that we've made some adjustments, but I'll get that number for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And does this include a proper ventilation system for the locker rooms in the future so that we won't have the same issue?
Correct.
Okay. I do know I had, actually, John, do you mind stepping up? I would ask you a couple questions.
Full disclosure, Autumn may be the better person to answer these, but we'll find out.
She wasn't in the email thread, so at least I didn't see. I had sent an email out recently asking about safe spaces for women in the locker rooms. One of the things that was mentioned in that one was the cost prohibiting of that kind of concept. When I see the prices keep going up, I would still like to know what kind of cost prohibiting that might be. I understand there's other issues with that one, but I'd still like to see what the cost would be if we were to do a scenario like that. So, I mean, when you say cost prohibiting and I see it's gone up by 600,000, I'm kind of like, is it cost prohibited or is it just a changing of mindsets?
I think it is, the reality as we see it, that we have a lot of people in the building every single day. Those locker rooms are built in such a way to accommodate a certain amount of capacity between on the women's side and on the men's side, and then in the private family cabanas. By taking away space in either the women's side or the men's side, you would adversely affect the capacity availability and the efficiency of the building. That building is only getting more popular. Our membership is at an all-time high, which is, I reported to you before, we're very excited about that, especially coming out of a pandemic. We're at an all-time high, and that's with the pool being down for almost a year. So the way we feel it's not efficient use of the finite amount of space that we have in the footprint, we could absolutely ask if there were a way to put in, when we go out into the bid situation, if we could find a way, but pretty much every square inch is accounted for right now in what we have in the existing footprint.
Okay. All right, then I'll leave that subject for a later time then.
Okay, thank you.
I'll bring it up again.
All right.
Right. Any other, Lydia, any questions? I don't see you, so,
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
okay, all right.
Thank you for checking in.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So, to the best of whoever's ability who came up with this budget, this is the final budget you think that?
Absolutely. We went back to the drawing board when we realized that the project was going to span out over 20 months versus a shorter time frame to do some minimal. So to back up, when council was presented with the current situation at the Federal Way Community Center, there were 3 different options: to do nothing, to kind of do something, or to fully renovate it. But that fully renovation, which started at 1.7, was a fast track. And we unfortunately, again, to be good stewards of your time, of the community members' money, we need to make sure that we are digging into qualifications and construction, especially coming, off of a long-term shutdown that we just finished. We want to make sure that that's there. So we went back to the drawing board to ensure that over that 20-month timeframe, we weren't going to have to come back to council with an adjusted budget next summer.
And so, since this is using ARPA money, how does the timeline affect the ARPA money?
The ARPA money will be spent prior to the end of the time frame requested, and then we will have additional grant funding that will allow us to extend out that time frame into 2026.
Thank you.
How optimistic are we that we'll be able to get the $600,000 from the King County Parks Aquatics Facilities Grant?
We certainly have to apply for it, but in initial conversations, we don't have hesitation in and around that grant. And we're also looking into other grant possibilities just to ensure that we can close the gap on the funding need.
Okay, all right, thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Autumn, we appreciate it.
Thank you. And just quickly, I want to thank our Rock Project Management team for being
Oh,
here. I didn't get a
okay.
chance to introduce you, but I will let them come up and introduce themselves really quickly before you guys move on, so that we know.
All right.
Apologies.
Good evening, Council. We're very pleased to be working with the City of Federal Way. In fact, it's the first time we've worked with the City of Federal Way, but we have had the benefit of working with a lot of different municipalities in the region. And so we look forward to serving you and providing a lot of value to this important project. We understand how important it is, and to get it right, that the reason that this project is having to happen now is because it wasn't maybe necessarily constructed right, or there's some challenges along the way. We want to make sure we get it right, and that's what you see is in some of the budget being elevated, is make sure that there aren't any surprises when it's constructed again, and it has a long life moving forward to serve a lot of people that are doing, using those spaces. So I'm the president of Rock Project Management. You have a commitment from this team that we're going to advocate on your behalf, making sure that we bring on a really good design team that knows how to design for these type of spaces. And then we'll make sure that you get a good contractor on board and manage it through the whole design and construction phase. So I'm the project leader on this, but we also have our project manager, Jason, here, that's worked actually with Federal Way before.
Hi, I'm Jason Suzaka. As Bernie mentioned, I'll be the project manager for this project. It's good to be here. I last worked here, I think, probably the early 2000s, so it's good to see some familiar faces around here, and I'm just really excited to be part of this project. Thank you.
Right, looks like Deputy Mayor Honda, before her though, where are you based out of?
Our headquarters is in Renton.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Nice.
Deputy Mayor.
So my question is, have you seen something like this happen before in a pool setting such as this?
No, I have not. We have dealt with water intrusion in existing facilities quite a bit, but not in a specific locker room like this. We see some ventilation and issues there. Some of the materials that were used are a little bit questionable. But we do see water intrusion issues that we have to deal with quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome to Federal Way.
Thank you.
So where did the water intrusion come from? I know, but I know where it was. I mean, I know where the mold was, but how did it,
On our project, or just in general?
in our facility?
Well, so it's a moist environment, you know, there's, if you look at the two corridors, I think we provided an assessment.
So we
that
didn't have a
shows the
leak
photos.
somewhere?
No,
Oh,
no,
that's
no.
what it was.
It's just a water saturation situation.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Right. And next, from John, the MOU for the Historical Society of Federal Way. And it looks like our Historical Society representative gave up on us, so.
It's a long meeting. First of all, good evening, Chair, Council President, Deputy Mayor, and members of the committee, and council members. Mine is pretty straightforward this evening. Policy question is, should the city renew the memorandum of understanding with the Historical Society of Federal Way? You should have received a memo with that, just outlining the fact that we would like to extend with the Historical Society. They've been a good partner with us for many years. We have a strong, positive relationship with them. We work with them closely throughout the year on lots of different projects, and we're excited to continue that relationship. And so that's why we would like to extend. So that is it, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Any, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for your work with the Historical Society. They're saving our history piece by piece, and they're the only ones really doing that, and I appreciate what they're doing, and I know it's not the easiest thing to do, but Federal Way does have a history, and we have a really great history, and it's, you know, we need to tell the story of our history and how we started here and how we've developed, so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Sefa Dawson, is your hand up? No? Okay, all right.
No, it's not.
There's a hand on your screen, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. It's the mouse, okay. All right. Watch out for the mouse, Lydia. So, all right.
Thank you for checking in on me, though. I appreciate it, really.
So, all right. Then, do we have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed MOU to the September 19th, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. All right.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item H, signage to discourage panhandling. Now, don't, you know, yeah, so anyway. So I know that Jason was getting anxious here, so anyway. But anyway. And Mary, do you have I think Autumn had been gonna. Is there a PowerPoint up here for you? Yeah, there's a PowerPoint up there for you.
He wants to do it from the dais, and Autumn's supposed to help him with that. She got instructions from.
Excuse me, Councilman Walsh, would you please include it in the agenda next time so I can proof it?
I can't hear anything.
Nothing's being said.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Councilmember Sefa Dawson, we're briefly working on some technology items, so hold please.
Got it, thanks.
All right.
Your panhandling.
Autumn has generously consented to help out, put and I want to thank Amy for putting together the PowerPoint. It's just some signs here.
So you should be able to control this with the arrow buttons or by clicking, I believe.
Okay.
But you can try the arrow button, it should arrow it over.
Okay.
Have your tech guy do it.
So they
Side arrows, you should be able to navigate.
All right.
There you
Okay.
go.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. All right. So, you know, I've discussed with some community members and also with some of the fellow council members the concept of having some signage to discourage panhandling. And so we have put together some examples of what's been done in other parts of the country. And this is basically just a discussion starter. And to see if we want to move in this direction. And if so, give staff some instructions on what to do. There's a number of questions. But I will go ahead and start this PowerPoint. So basically, the idea is in some of the key panhandling spots, putting up signage which discourages panhandling and encourages people to give to nonprofits that can actually help them, so that the money they're given out is not just going to drugs or alcohol or other things, or there's also, I think, some professional panhandlers out there that find it a comfortable way to make a living. So anyway, this is from one in Florida, and I'm just going to scroll through here. You know, obviously contributing to the solution. You know, another idea here. Say no to panhandling. Just go ahead and go through it here. Don't support panhandling. Help more by giving to charity. Have a heart, give smart. And another, say no to panhandling. I like this one a lot. It has a QR code there. Personally, I think it may be good to have something where there's a QR code and a URL both, where people can you know, as I see it, for example, coming out of Costco, you know, where there's always the panhandlers there. I mean, you're going slow right there. You probably have time to do the QR code. If not, you'd be able to have a URL. Yeah, I mean, this kind of appeals more to the safety idea. But you know, one of the things that I think that's important is that if we were to have something like this, that it would have asking people not to give to panhandlers, providing a solution, a positive solution that they can go with, and also and an easy way to get to that solution, and also probably something in small, where the people who are panhandling, just a very small, that hey, if you need help, you know, a number to call, or another someplace where they can reach services. And so that is basically it. But like I say, I just wanted to have this as a discussion starter to see if there is the interest with the council to pursue this. I mean, there's some of the questions that we'd have to answer is that obviously there's some budgetary things. We need to find out what kind of you know, a study to see how many signs we'd need, what the budget is for them, and get the kind of the logistics of that. But Council Member McDaniel, you had your light on first.
Oh, I think we should move forward with at least investigating a little bit more. I do know that we had mentioned at one time Gig Harbor had an ordinance about panhandling and not giving, so I'd be curious to know if anybody's researched, or if we could research to see what they have going on. My question on this one is, it looks like a lot of these things are recommendations, suggestions. Are we looking at making it more of an ordinance, and is there any kind of, if you get caught giving money to somebody, is there any kind of penalty for it? Is it enforceable, or is it just a recommendation?
Well, I think that it would need to be a suggestion myself, but I think that you know, I mean, we cannot, from my understanding, the Supreme Court has says that you can't outlaw panhandling. It's free speech, you know. Personally, I'm not quite sure why that is speech, but if that's what the Supreme Court says, that's what we need to go along with. As far as giving to panhandlers, I'm not sure what the courts say about that, whether we could have something saying you can't give to them. But I think it would be best, or a viable solution would be simply to encourage them to people to give in another way. I know a lot of people, they feel guilty if they're not helping out, but in the end, that's really not helping lots of times. And there are things where they can put their money that'll actually help. So, anyway, and Council President.
Well, maybe Deputy Mayor Honda and Councilmember Cephas-Dawson will remember this, because it was before I came on council, but I thought Mark Copang already passed this, and we already agreed to do it. We didn't?
I know that
No,
with
we
Mark, there
had
was a
these-
discussion of it, so.
We did not agree.
Yeah, we had a discussion, and there was even a list of where the signs could potentially go. There's also the discussion of the cost, and who was gonna put the signs up when they were ripped down and defaced,
Okay.
which has happened in other communities. So there is a cost to it, and that has to be discussed too, because it could be a significant cost.
Yeah. You know, I think that we need to find out, maybe we can resurrect the study that was done before. I don't know who has it. Do anybody over there know?
I'll jump in on that one. So this was discussed previously at the Land Use and Transportation Committee back in 2020, and I think prior to that also in 2018, but I'm not sure on that date. But I do know it was discussed in 2020 and does have information on that, which I can dig up and forward to all of you if you are interested in that as well. And thank you for noting the First Amendment issues. And just a quick note on any sort of ordinance that would prohibit panhandling, that would be something that would be precluded by the Constitution. That is something that has been decided upon by the Washington State Supreme Court. I think that's it for now.
Could you look into the Gig Harbor
Yeah,
ordinance that's out there?
I could look at the Gig Harbor ordinance and see if it's actually in existence, but any ordinances that would prohibit or prevent or otherwise penalize panhandling, I think both of the person.
Not the panhandling, it's the giving of the money. That's what I'm questioning.
Right.
Where the change comes into.
It could also be considered speech on that part as well. So,
Autumn,
but I will,
thank you.
I'll take a look at it and see what is out there.
Do you also, in that information, do you have the list of where the signs, where we had discussed where the signs were going to be potentially go?
Yes, I believe it's actually in a memo that was provided to that committee, so I'll send a link to that if you like.
Could we get a cost update on that also? Well, you probably wouldn't be the one doing that, but.
That'd probably
I
be
don't-
something that Public Works would
Okay.
probably need to address.
All righty, thank you, I appreciate it.
You know, I think one possible idea is, as far as cost goes, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, but it's an idea, is some of the stores and shopping centers, talk to them and say, hey, if you pay for the sign, the city will pay for putting it up. Something like that. You know, like I say, I don't know whether that's a feasible idea, but it's an idea.
So that, when we discussed it before, we didn't discuss putting the signs on private property. It was certain intersections around the city that the staff felt were more impacted by people that were panhandling.
Yeah.
But it wasn't private property.
Yeah. But we could take a look at all the different options.
Correct.
You know, I think that there's a need, you know, I think we just need to determine the feasibility of it, so. Council President Coachmark.
Well, one other thing, I was contacted by a constituent and sent a picture of the person sitting on the little piece of divider over by Walgreens on 320th. Again, this time with
Yeah.
a dog today.
Yeah.
And that's not safe. And I know it's on private property, but, I mean, I'm not sure what we can do about that.
I'll chime in just because Public Works is not here, but as I understand it, previously, there was some changes that were made even to that small median to try to discourage a person from sitting on it because it was so dangerous. And those adjustments that were made were actually ripped out by folks, we're not sure who. So I believe that's the case. However, again, you know, Public Works would be able to speak more to any sort of changes that have been made to that area as well. But it is a concern, I understand.
Yeah, and if we're talking about, now this is completely off topic, but if we're talking to Public Works, I mean, at that same location, there needs to be a right-hand only sign there. It seems like there was one at one time, and I think that it may have been removed because it's so anyway.
But if you're going to
But-
put a sign up anywhere, apparently that appears to be a lucrative spot to sit.
Yes,
Or they
yes.
wouldn't be there.
Mhm.
You know,
And
so-
directly across the street from it as well.
Yeah,
On both
so-
sides there, and so, also, with panhandling, I'm not sure who to direct this question to, I guess to, the police, I don't know, or I'm not sure, I mean, that there's some places where some of the panhandlers have started having their children there as well with them. And it seems as though that suddenly it's no longer free speech, but I mean, that's child endangerment. And what do we need to, how would we find out what laws would be concerning that?
I'll chime in again. I will look into that and see if there's any options there. Of course, if you believe that you are witnessing at any time, and I think the police department would probably be in agreement with this, but if you believe you're witnessing a crime in progress, that is something that should be reported to the police. As far as anything that involves a child, there's other things that could come along with that, but I will look into more for you.
So-
Child Protective Services for one.
So, all right. So I think that as a, Lydia, I'm not seeing you again right now. Do you
I have a comment. Yes, I'm waiting.
Yes, go ahead.
So yeah, when this topic came up a couple of years ago, this is what I stated, and I'm going to repeat it. One thing that I know, and I do, the signs may be effective, but the freedom of speech issue did come up then too, which we didn't resolve. My concern is anytime we put this burden on a nonprofit organization, it's going to be challenging. We're making the assumption that they can support an influx of people who need assistance. We also need to be cognizant of and supportive, because I don't think a lot of people driving by, I can give my $1, $2, whatever amount I want to give, but sending money to a nonprofit is not a $1, $2 thing, right? It's more. So we have to be also aware of that, and also that those nonprofits have the capacity. I think if that's the route we're taking, then we need to connect with them. And I think then the city might have to fund them at a higher level, fund them for this particular purpose, because I honestly don't think a lot of people are going to really stop and donate to nonprofits for this purpose or for whatever. I mean, I'm not just saying panhandling, but we're putting undue burden on the agencies that we think these should go to. So that's one comment. My other comment is, so in the event that I do decide to give someone money, is there penalties? Is there fees? This legal thing that am I doing something illegal, right? So is that really what we're saying, or is it to discourage? What exactly is our motive, and what's the end result? And I know we're trying to discourage panhandling, but then what's the ramification that could happen, or unintended consequences? So I think we do need to consider that. But the last comment about children who are there, I totally get it. And yes, I think that's something that needs to be looked into. But again, is it illegal for kids just to sit out there? And I don't know. So these are just questions that we need to look into before we move forward with this ordinance. If we do decide to move forward with it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions or your comments. I think it's to discourage panhandling and to encourage giving to nonprofits. And as I see it, I don't think there'd be any additional burden on the nonprofits. Really, I think that that they would receive some additional contributions. How much is hard to say. But the fact that somebody is not receiving money that's likely to be spent on drugs or alcohol, I don't think that makes an impact on whether the bottom line of the nonprofit. And not to say that that's where all of it goes, but I mean, if I have a Kind bar in my car, I gladly give it to a panhandler, but I'm not going to give any money to them. So anyway. All right.
I do have one last question.
But I think we need to talk to the nonprofits that we're suggesting.
Yeah, certainly.
Heads up.
Excuse me, that the people are referred to. Because it could be more burdensome, and do we know about their capacity to serve
Yeah.
this population, and all these things that I think need to be addressed with them.
So, yeah, certainly we should get feedback from them. Deputy Mayor?
It's possible we just have the sign and we don't say, give to this group. Just, please don't, give to the panhandlers.
Yeah,
Give to your favorite, charity, but not list them, because that was a big part of the discussion before was, how do we support the charities who are having to do the work? Or do we have a staff member here that is gonna dole out the money that comes into this QR code or whatever? That was a huge part of the discussion.
You know, the screen that it's on right now, say no to panhandling, contribute to the solution, give to local charities. Doesn't, yeah, you're right, it doesn't say what one. Then need help, housing crisis hotline. No, I mean, that could be a possible thing also, so. All right, yes.
I have one quick question. I know that the First Amendment rights and all that kind of stuff, but we also have sign ordinances and permitting requirements. Is it not possible to have an ordinance or a sign permit that requires you to get a permit before you hold signs on the side of the road? Is that a non-possibility?
that's free speech.
It's free speech, but I know, but we have, is it holding a sign?
Back to our city attorney.
Yeah, there's a lot of protection for freedom of speech under the First Amendment of the Constitution. So, no would be the answer that I would say.
There's no limitations on how large a sign can be on the side of the road?
Well, there's limitations for time, place, and manner when you're regulating freedom of speech. So there's an awful lot of case law about this, and it would have to be, so in an instance like you're mentioning as far as like a size of a sign, if that would create a hazard or something like that, a public safety concern, that is absolutely something that the city can take action on and could do so probably within its current legal framework, to be honest. That could potentially be something that could be reported to police if it's something that is dangerous, presenting a danger to the public. But as far as creating a permit for signage and things of that nature, that gets into a very sticky, it depends, oh my gosh, and very large gray area very fast. But yeah, that's not something that we can engage in lightly. Let's put it that way.
It's not an impossibility, but it's a big hill.
It would be an incredibly narrow thing that would be very rarely applied.
Oh, I like that. Sounds like an option.
That, well, I'm speaking
So I still have a
off the
chance to
cuff.
quote from,
And, generally don't like to give, legal advice on the fly. However, I can say with some extreme confidence that any restrictions on any of our rights under the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution are going to be looked at extremely closely by anyone.
all right. All right, hey, thank you. It sounds like that we have some direction for staff to get some information back to us, and we can take it from there. So, all right, and with that, Jason, it's finally your turn. What? Now you're getting picky. Okay. All right, so this is on to authorization to apply for a local parks grant for Sahali Park. Oh, Lydia, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, I just didn't put it down.
Okay, all right, sounds great. It's not a mouse.
Hi, good evening, Councilmember Walsh, council members. Hope I got a softball here for you. Policy question before you is, should the city council authorize staff to apply for a recreation and conservation office local maintenance grants to resurface tennis courts and one basketball court at Sahali Park? As you know, our tennis courts have had maintenance deferred on them for years, and recently our state legislature allocated $100 million for local municipalities for maintenance grants. Individual grants can be up to $100,000. And so we looked at some of our backlog maintenance, and tennis courts is a big one of them. Pickleball being a huge driver in the recreation field right now. Over the summer, we had painted some lines on the tennis courts at Sahali to accommodate the loss of pickleball courts at the community center due to day camp. And so
We looked at all our tennis courts, and several of our tennis courts are well beyond $100,000 to repair. And so we tried to get the most bang for our buck in applying for this grant. And so we are looking at the 4 tennis courts at Sahali and the 1 basketball court. We have estimates in hand for that are right in the range of about $88,000. So we're going to be asking the RCO office for a $100,000 grant. It's a streamlined process. The goal of the legislature was to address municipalities' backlogs in maintenance in parks. And so hence, we're trying to get some free money to get some work done that's long overdue. And so we would respectfully request your permission to do so.
All right.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Got some easy ones for you. Do you know how many tennis courts we actually do have that under parks?
You're gonna make me use my fingers now. I should know it off the top of my head, and I.
Oh, close. I'm
I
just
believe
curious.
it's 8, but we're 4 at Sahali, Adelaide, Alderdale, 312 Sport Courts, and Sacagawea has 2, so that'd make 9.
9, okay. Sure, because somebody mentioned pickleball and how big of a sport it's becoming again, and I was shocked on that one. And when was the last time Sahali was actually painted? Has it been since the originally was installed? It hasn't been touched?
Oh, no. We, I want to say we did, redid Sahali. It was, and I don't think we did the tennis courts at the time. I believe it was just the basketball court. And I want to say that was in like the 2011, 2012 timeframe. So.
Oh, 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the coatings are about a 7-year lifespan on them, so we've maximized that. We have a couple tennis courts, being Sacagawea has 2 tennis courts, and Alderdale has 1 that are in complete disrepair and, need to be redone. And Sacagawea comes up on a secular basis. It becomes of interest of city council and our citizens. And again, we've got such a maintenance backlog in the Parks Department that it's never been the cream to rise to the top to get the eligible money for funding.
So this one's not actually repairs as much as just repainting?
This is basically a resurfacing, and because it's still got the structural integrity, let's keep that integrity up where, like I say, ideally, when we saw the grant, we were hoping we could get a Sacagawea done or an Alderdale done, but it just exceeds that $100,000 that's available.
What would the SAC cost?
SAC cost, and I
Ballpark, don't need to be exact.
I figured probably $500,000.
Okay.
Wow.
For all
Well,
three?
you've got to completely redo the asphalt. The asphalt it has about an 8-inch gap in it, and it's closer to the net. But so you need to take it all out and redo it fresh. And so you got the demo cost, you got the new asphalt pad, you got new fencing, you got lighting, those sorts of things. So, like I say, and that's a rough number. And ask John. I generally do not commit to numbers on the fly.
That is absolutely a first in his career that he would ever commit to any kind of a number.
And it's not a commitment. It's just I'm spitballing here, and
It's a
and
number.
I
It's a
think
start
you're in
point.
that range.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay, thank you.
We're going to hold you to it forever.
And that's the problem with spitballing numbers.
Right. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. So with the Sahali tennis courts, will they be used for pickleball too?
So that's currently for this summer, we had painted what we call mod fields on the tennis courts. We did not provide pickleball nets. Patrons had to bring those, but they avidly did. We only did 2 courts. The goal would be to have all 4 of those courts have modified pickleball on them available.
Okay, good idea. That park is used so much.
it's-
It's day and night. I mean,
Yeah.
just constant people there
Yeah,
using it.
basically, it's got used from 7 o'clock in the morning when the students arrive until 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night when we shut off the lights.
There's some cities that I've been following that do pickleball tournaments, and they close down streets. And they make pickleball courts in the streets and have these huge tournaments that bring people in from all over. It's quite the deal, and it sounds like it's making money for these cities.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know how
it-
much work it takes, probably quite a lot of work, but it sounds like it's a lot of fun for the cities that are doing it.
Yeah, it takes work, and you're in the place where pickleball started, just right
Yeah.
here in the Pacific Northwest.
And we could close through 20th then, wouldn't that be interesting?
Ooh, talk to EJ on that one. I want no part of that.
So, a quick question. I mean, with that, I mean, would the, for a special tournament or something like that, would the parking lot at Celebration Park be a possible place to have some temporary pickleball courts for a tournament or something?
Generally, we try not to have recreational activities in the parking lot. It's just a general thing.
Well, generally, people
separate-
don't
now,
have
if you shut the
recreational
parking lot-
activities in the street either.
You shut down the parking lot and invite a bunch of people to Celebration Park, where are they gonna park so that we can have the activities
okay.
there? That's part of the issue, and so, it's something that we should potentially look into, though, for maybe a future special event.
Yeah, maybe next summer. I mean, it sounds like it's the new thing to do to get people into your towns for tourists and that
I
kind
don't
of
know
stuff.
about next summer. We've got other fresh ideas that are coming out of the woodworks, and limited, we're at capacity.
Yeah, I know,
as
I
we
don't want to
speak.
give you more work, so it was just an idea.
We can't take on anymore, hence why we need rock project management and other people, because, I mean, we are at capacity, and I feel like my camel's back is broke.
I thought we were building a rock wall or something when I saw that agenda item, because there's no information with it, so.
All right, seeing no other questions, do we have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed authorization for staff to apply for a local maintenance grant to resurface 4 tennis courts and 1 basketball court to the September 19th, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 That carries unanimously. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for your support, council.
And I believe that is it. If there's no other comments by anyone, the next meeting will be October 10th at 5 PM right here, and we are adjourned at 7:10. Thank you.